This year's state budget included a big step forward for people with developmental disabilities, according to the New York State ARC. OPWDD is getting extra funding to help provide services for people whose caregiver is aging or otherwise losing the ability to take care of them. And the agency will be required to review the housing needs and other services for people on the residential registry. We'll get to a little detailed of that a little later. This comes after a letter writing campaign we have discussed on this show in the past. Here with the update is NYSARC's Executive Director Steve Kroll. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me today, Liz.
So I don't want to color it too positively. I mean, you definitely did better than you had last year, but you're not getting everything you want.
Right. We've made a good step forward, but there's a lot of work still to be done. The budget contains language that does put some more money into helping people who are developmentally disabled that have been living at home with their family caregivers for their entire lives, and now the family caregivers are aging, and some of them have disabilities of their own or are simply too elderly to necessarily provide a full, loving home that's safe for their family members. And for many years those families have counted on that the state would be able to provide support for people when they needed it. And so there is some new money in the budget for that, but it's not just about money. It's also about the system of how people get that help. You mentioned something called the residential registry.
Yes, tell us more about that.
That's a list of people who have made requests to the state saying that they are caring for a developmentally disabled family member at home. Often it's a parent caring for their child. And many of these people have been on the list for many years. So we had some people come to Albany this year to join us for a press conference, and there were the three women that came in were talking about each of them having their child on that list for 10, 12, 14, 15 years waiting for some placement. And the list wasn't being used.
Right.
And in addition, the system for people to get the support has become very cumbersome. It's called the front door.
Okay, before you go any further, I just want to make a distinction here that I think I'm confused about. There is, the Olmstead Act, for example, requires that people are put in sort of best case scenario residential facilities on their own, right? Not hospitalized, not institutionalized. Right. This is not that. This is not what we're talking about here.
This is not that.
Okay.
Many people have chosen to dedicate themselves to their family members for their lives. Right. And certainly a loving, supportive environment, being cared for by your family, whatever supports are needed, is a wonderful place for someone to live, whether it's someone who is enabled differently or with some sort of disability. However, this is family members who are maybe a parent in their 80s who has been caring for what is now an adult child. In some cases that child is a senior citizen now. And the family member could be a widow, could be a widower, could be another relative, and they're reaching their own mortality. So they're in their 80s or 70s and still caring and having to lift a child, lift a person.
Sure. So they got on these lists thinking they were doing the right thing. They got on 20 years ago and said to themselves, well, I've got a lot of foresight here and I'm planning for the future, and then nothing happened.
Right. And somewhere the list became less relevant and wasn't really looked at. And the state also put in place a policy called the front door, which is a way of people applying for services through one portal. So instead of having multiple application processes, there's one way to say we need services for someone who's developmentally disabled, whether that be a residential service where somebody is going to live, whether it be transportation to and from employment, whether it be finding employment, whether it be programs to go to during the daytime. That front door has been cumbersome and not functioning well, so people who are looking for services would get to the front door and find it was difficult to come through. So it's not just about money.
Complete opposite of what it's supposed to be, obviously. So the problem here is that you have your work cut out for you. The community has its work cut out for it because you have responsibilities and you've got to keep the state on the straight and narrow to deliver what this budget suggests could be deliverable down the road.
Right. NYSARC's a family-based organization, and we provide support for about 60,000 developmentally disabled New Yorkers. There are many other organizations that we work in partnership with that care for many other people that have different abilities. And so our goal now is going to be to work with the legislative language that basically has laid out a pathway for OPWDD, which is the agency that has oversight for care for the developmentally disabled, and the legislature and work forward in developing processes that make sure that list is verified. So the state is going to contact everybody on this residential registry list. Then they're going to have to work on ways to, with the families and with the providers, to make sure that people that are on that registry that need services can get connected with the services in an efficient way and rapidly, and then make sure that the funding is there. And they did put some new money in.
Yeah. Do you have confidence that the state can actually deliver? I mean, particularly when your experience has been not great. In other words, the state had a list that was supposed to be used in a certain way. Now they're saying, okay, we recognize that the list was not being used in the way that it was supposed to be. The front door policy wasn't working, program wasn't working. We're going to fix it.
Right.
But they already have a track record that's not so great.
Well, our work is cut out from us, but we have some great partners. Commissioner Delaney of OPWDD has convened a task force or a panel of experts that I sit on that has been meeting with her every other week, and we're going to be going for 6 more months where we are diving into each one of these topics in great detail to try and work and find ways. And this panel is made up of parents of people with developmental disabilities, advocates for people with developmental disabilities like myself, and also some people with developmental disabilities or self-advocates. So we're working together on a regular basis. We'll probably all put in 50 or 60 hours individually over the next 6 months on working on these problems. We have support in the executive branch in that we were able to reach consensus on the budget on something that everybody supports, and that was not where we were last year. Last year the legislature wanted to approach these issues, and we're not successful in getting it done. We've got 2 great chairpersons in the legislature, Senator Ort, a new senator, but chair of the Mental Hygiene Committee in the Senate, Assemblywoman Gunther, chair of the Mental Health Committee in the Assembly. We're all focused together, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. We are going to have our work cut out from us, but what's really exciting is that the budget does outline a pathway that says we're going to look at the data. That data is going to be public. That data is going to be available to the families, to the providers, and then we work from there. So we're going to see results in a measurable way, or we're not going to see results in a measurable way, and that will give us as advocates a chance to continue working on this.
Well, we'll have you back then for an update. You can tell us how things are going. It's about a year and change time, so maybe halfway through you can come back.
All right. Well, we've got a year is what the reports are due back to the legislature and how things are going next February.
Right.
As a practical matter, we have to start seeing results in the summer and fall because that's when the state budget for next year will start being developed.
Good.
So we're going to travel the state this summer and help people continue to tell their stories.
So we will talk to you, Steve. You'll be back, and we'll hear more. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.